We can now bring in our international affairs commentator, Douglas Herbert. Good afternoon, Doug.
Good afternoon.
It seems to be, once again, a situation of he said, she said. Whose hands is Soledar in?
Look, first of all, Soledar, we don't know whether it's been captured or not, and there have been a lot of false claims in the past 24 hours suggesting that's been entirely captured by Russian troops, and we're even seeing rifts among the Russians. Look, this is a small salt mining town. It's strategically insignificant, other than the fact that you could say the salt mine might have some commercial value, and it's also 10 kilometers north of Bakhmut, which has been, yes, an immediate objective of the Russians over what putting it mildly, heavy fighting. The city of Bakhmut has been destroyed. It is a ghost town. And similarly, Soledar has been practically emptied of any civilians. It is also a shell of its former self after these months of heavy fighting. So, why all the attention? Why are we standing here talking about this town today, getting all this disproportionate headlines? Mainly because the Kremlin propagandists, and there's no real easier way to put this, Kremlin propagandists and their state-run media lackeys are absolutely desperate for anything that will allow them to cry some sort of victory, to show that they are on the offensive, making advances, carrying out what Putin said is an operation going as normal since the very beginning, this special military operation. The fact of the matter is we are seeing divisions within the Russian military. We have seen on one side this Wagner group, and also you have with Yevgeny Prigozhin at the head of it, but also sort of allied with him in a weird way is Ramzan Kadyrov, the Chechen leader, who is also, they're called the Soloviki. They're sort of opposed in many ways, even though not explicitly all the time, to the Russian Ministry of Defense, the Russian Armed Forces, the official Kremlin line. They're not going to go on the record and say, we are opposed. They're not going to be on public display. But there is this internecine battle, if you will, between these factions. What's interesting is that while Prigozhin has been suggesting that it is he who has taken the initiative, his Wagner Group forces in Soledar, they're the ones about to capture this town if they already haven't and are in the center. The Kremlin, let's listen to the spokesman, Dmitry Peskov, is singing from a very different hymn sheet. Listen what he had to say about Soledar.
Let's not rush. Let's wait for official statements. We have positive dynamics in advancing. Success in military actions will be achieved when we will achieve goals set by the Supreme Commander Vladimir Putin during the special military operation, although tactical gains are very important.
It's fascinating. You don't have to read that much between the lines there. That is the official Putin presidential spokesman essentially saying, calling out Prigozhin, the head of the Wagner Group that is right now in Soledar, whose forces have been photographed and seen on social media, saying not so fast. Let's not all of these hasty, premature claims of victory. So what you're really seeing is the Russian army trying to stay on top of this and stay in control, saying we're ultimately the ones who call the shots. Ultimately, the supreme commander of the armed forces isn't Yevgeny Prigozhin. Sorry, it's Vladimir Putin. We will be in control of Soledar when we say we're in control of Soledar.
It's funny, while you were speaking, we do have a statement from Vladimir Putin telling the government that the situation in Russian annexed regions of Ukraine is difficult in places.
There you have. I mean, that's from Putin, right?
It's from the horse's mouth.
If he's saying it's difficult, you can imagine how grueling it really is.
Let's talk about some of the criticism the Kremlin has come under.
Yeah. We have to also take this with a slight grain of salt, but it's significant because who it's coming from. So you basically have a former Russian commander of militants in the Donbas region who has become a very prominent pro-Kremlin, I do emphasize pro-Putin military blogger. There are a lot of them. Many of these bloggers have become more critical. Oleg Gherkin is his name. He has gone further than most. In recent days, he has explicitly criticized Putin. And the reason that's significant is because most of these military bloggers, when you talk about rising voices of opposition against this war among the pro-Kremlin military bloggers, Putin's like the Tsar. He's above it all. No one directly criticizes Putin. If you're going to criticize something, you criticize the Russian military, the strategy, the commanders, the generals, perhaps the Russian Minister of Defense, Sergei Shoigu. But the fact that Gherkin dared, and I guess that's the right word, dared, given the consequences he might have if you criticize Putin too publicly and too visibly, the fact that he basically criticized Putin for appointing and then failing to remove commanders and generals that he and some others, unnamed, perceive as being disastrous in their command of Russian forces, having overseen some signal setbacks in recent months, notably in Kharkiv Oblast, notably in Kherson, and in Donbas as well. The fact that Putin is not in that, he's saying, let's let's say things the way they are. Call Putin out. If his commanders are making these disastrous mistakes, ultimately Putin should be held responsible. So he didn't call for Putin's removal from power, but his criticism suggested that if something were to happen in the next few months or this year that would see Putin removed from power, he wouldn't be too critical of such a development.
Thank you very much for that, Douglas. Douglas Herbert there.